In the highlands of modern-day Iraq, in a cave known as Shanidar, a 76,000-year-old skeleton was found with a broken arm. Not just broken, shattered. His lower arm had been crushed, likely beyond repair. But more astonishingly, it had healed. The bones had fused in a way that suggested not only survival, but a slow, cared-for recovery. This man, now known as Shanidar I, lived long after his injury. For archaeologists and anthropologists, this discovery sparked a profound question. How did early humans and their extinct cousins care for broken bones in a world without hospitals, painkillers, or even spoken language? The answer begins with bones themselves. Fractures that have mended show smooth edges, calluses, and realignment. They're proof not only of the body's natural healing, but of time. Time when the individual was likely unable to hunt, gather, or defend themselves. For someone to live through that meant someone else had to help. It implies attention, protection, and in some sense, medical intervention, thousands of years before the first surgical tools. This isn't an isolated find. Across Europe, Asia, and Africa, remains of early humans, Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, even Homo erectus, show signs of healed injuries. Skulls with cracks, legs with braces of bone regrowth, even ribs that had once been snapped. In a grave at La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, a Neanderthal man was found with arthritis, a missing molar, and a severely injured hip. He couldn't have walked alone, yet he was buried carefully by those who clearly saw value in his continued existence. Scholars still debate whether such care was intentional compassion or simply an instinct for group survival. Was caring for the injured a proto-moral behavior, or was it a practical need, an investment in a known member of the group who might still contribute in other ways? Perhaps it was both. The evidence doesn't answer everything, but it does challenge long-standing assumptions that early humans lived harsh, solitary lives driven only by self-interest. And then there's the unexpected. Some early hominins show signs of multiple injuries, broken and rebroken bones, suggesting not only care, but continued care over months or years. These were not one-off acts, they were patterns. As we peer into these silent skeletons, a new story begins to form. One not of brutality and chaos, but of survival through interdependence. Long before cities, stethoscopes, or sterile gauze, our ancestors found ways to tend to the wounded, and perhaps in doing so they laid the foundation for what it means to be human. Buried beneath layers of soil and centuries of time, bones often speak louder than words ever could. One such message emerged from a prehistoric burial site in what is now northern Kenya. Among the remains were individuals with clearly healed femur fractures, injuries that today would require weeks in traction, physical therapy, and possibly surgery. Yet here they were, bones that had mended long before antibiotics, braces, or knowledge of sterile environments. The femur, the largest and strongest bone in the human body, doesn't break easily. When it does, the consequences are severe. A person with a broken femur in the wild would be immobile, vulnerable to predators, and entirely dependent on others. The fact that any such injury healed in antiquity suggests not just luck, but a prolonged effort to keep the person alive and safe. One skeleton found at Nataruk displayed a healed thigh bone with signs of proper alignment. Scholars studying it note the implications. Someone had to carry food to the injured, protect them from the elements, perhaps even help reposition the limb. Such acts indicate something remarkable, an understanding, however rudimentary, of both injury and healing. But not all healed fractures follow this tidy narrative. Some show evidence of being twisted or poorly set, bones healed at odd angles causing lifelong limps or deformities. One theory proposes that early humans might have used wooden splints tied with plant fibers to hold bones in place. These materials would decay over time, leaving no trace, but their use can be inferred from the consistent healing patterns in different populations. Then there are more peculiar clues. In a 7,000-year-old grave in Germany, archaeologists found an individual buried with an animal bone tightly wrapped around a human limb. Was it a failed attempt at a splint? A spiritual ritual? Scholars still debate whether this represented medicine or mysticism. The line between the two in prehistoric times was thin, and yet across continents and millennia, the consistency of healed fractures tells us something fundamental. Early humans were watching, learning, and responding. They were not passive in the face of injury. They improvised. We may never fully reconstruct the exact methods used to treat these wounds, but the bones themselves, mended, misaligned, or even marked with possible tool cuts, whisper of a world where recovery was possible, and where the injured were not simply left behind. They were kept close, healed slowly, and remembered. The care was imperfect, but it was real. Step into the cool shadow of a Neanderthal cave and you don't just find stone tools or animal bones. You find clues to a life built on cooperation, where compassion might have mattered as much as fire or flint. In the rugged limestone of Shanidar Cave, northern Iraq, researchers discovered a striking cluster of Neanderthal skeletons. Among them, Shanidar 1 stood out not just for his age, about 40 years old, ancient by prehistoric standards, but for the sheer number of traumas he had survived. He had a crushed eye socket, a withered arm likely rendered useless in childhood, and hearing loss that would have made communication difficult. His right leg showed signs of degenerative disease, possibly arthritis, and yet he lived into old age. He wasn't just tolerated, he was supported. Someone helped him find food. Someone may have led him as he limped or gestured his way through daily life. And eventually someone buried him. Inside similar Neanderthal sites like La Ferrici in France or Krapina in Croatia, more skeletons with disabling injuries have been found. Many of them had healed. These weren't flukes. This was a pattern. Scholars still debate whether this behavior arose from deep emotional bonds or evolutionary strategy. Was caring for the injured a sign of genuine empathy, or a way to preserve experienced group members who held knowledge, like where to find water or how to build tools? The fossil record cannot settle this debate, but it suggests something fundamental. Neanderthal groups didn't just leave the weak behind. They made space for them. Some researchers point to the shared use of hearths, fire pits ringed with stones and bones, as evidence of collective living. Injured individuals would have needed warmth to stave off infection or shock. Food cooked and shared in these spaces would have sustained them. And perhaps stories were told too, grunts or gestures that held meaning, binding the group as tightly as any sinew. Then there are the burials themselves. In one corner of Shanidar Cave, the body of a Neanderthal was found dusted with pollen from wildflowers. Did his companions perform a kind of prehistoric funeral, laying blooms beside him as a final gesture? Or were the flowers the work of rodents or wind? Scholars still debate the true meaning of that pollen, but the possibility of ritual, of remembrance, lingers. The caves echo with more than silence. They echo with evidence of resilience, not just the physical healing of bone, but the social bonds that made such healing possible. A broken body didn't mean a broken life, not in these ancient stone-walled sanctuaries. Imagine a time before written words, before formal tools, before even consistent spoken language. Early humans faced wounds as brutal as any today: crushed legs from a fall, snapped arms from a hunt gone wrong, or shattered ribs from a panicked animal's charge. Yet somehow many of them survived. Not only did they live, they healed. And this raises a striking question. Without medical knowledge, how did they immobilize broken limbs? Among archaeologists, one theory persists. Our ancestors likely invented crude splints using natural materials, long before they had the words to describe what they were doing. A sturdy branch, straight and thick, strips of animal hide or vines soaked and wrapped, moss to cushion the skin. It's a scene as silent as it is ingenious. A member of the group gingerly placing wood against a swollen leg, tying it down, and waiting, watching for weeks as the limb slowly mended. One of the most compelling hints comes from a 9,000-year-old burial in the Levant, where a forearm bone was found unnaturally aligned, and signs of consistent compression suggested external stabilization. No splint survived, it would have decayed centuries ago, but the bone's healing pattern resembles what happens today when a limb is immobilized. Scholars still debate whether early humans truly understood the biological function of immobilization, or simply mimicked what they saw in nature. Animals limp and rest. A wounded pack member lies low. Perhaps early humans noticed that motion made things worse and stillness improved outcomes. It may have been observation, not intention, that sparked innovation. Fringe theories go even further. Some suggest early hominins used hardened clay to mold makeshift casts. No direct archaeological evidence has yet confirmed this, but certain burn sites show remnants of shaped earth and human. remains in positions suggesting prolonged rest. Were these protocasts? Primitive experiments in keeping bones aligned? Or something else entirely? The debate continues. And yet it's the universality that's most telling. Across regions and time periods, from the jungles of Southeast Asia to the grasslands of East Africa, prehistoric skeletons reveal consistent signs of healing that imply external stabilization. These weren't isolated flashes of brilliance. This was shared human adaptation, passed down not through language but through demonstration, mimicry, and memory. Before writing and before medicine, there were hands, calloused, cautious, deliberate, reaching out to help. The first splints may not have looked like much, but they were symbols of something larger: problem-solving, patience, and maybe even love. The kind of care that didn't need words. Broken bones don't just need stabilizing, they hurt. And they hurt badly. A snapped femur or cracked rib would trigger searing pain, swelling, and possibly infection. Today we have morphine, anesthesia, and antibiotics. But what about our early ancestors? Did they simply grit their teeth and suffer in silence? Or could they have found relief in the world around them? Across the globe, ethnobotanists, scientists who study traditional uses of plants, have long documented the pain-relieving properties of wild herbs and roots. Willow bark, for instance, contains salicin, a chemical remarkably similar to modern aspirin. In small doses, it reduces pain and inflammation. It grows across temperate zones and would have been accessible to many prehistoric communities. Though we have no written recipes from 20,000 BCE, it's not a stretch to imagine that through trial and error, early humans discovered its effects. In caves from Europe to the Middle East, researchers have found traces of plant residue on stone tools and human teeth. At Spain's El Sidrón site, a Neanderthal's dental plaque was analyzed and revealed surprising contents. Traces of yarrow and chamomile, both bitter, non-nutritive plants with known medicinal qualities. One even showed signs of a compound called poplar, a natural source of painkiller-like agents. Were these early analgesics consumed intentionally? Scholars still debate whether these plants were eaten for their pharmacological value or as part of broader dietary habits. But the evidence is tantalizing. Fringe theories abound here too. Some researchers propose the use of psychoactive mushrooms or fermented beverages to dull pain, rituals conducted during healing ceremonies. While direct proof is lacking, certain cave paintings in Algeria and Siberia appear to depict figures surrounded by plants with known narcotic effects. Could these have been proto-anesthetics delivered through chewing, smoke, or drink? It's a seductive, if speculative, notion, but pain relief may not have come only from plants. Simple remedies, cold streams to reduce swelling, mud to soothe burns, or even animal fat rubbed into skin, could have provided temporary comfort. Heat too may have played a role. Some injuries appear to have been exposed to fire, possibly as a form of cauterization or warmth therapy. At sites in Turkey, burned bone fragments suggest that fire wasn't just for cooking, it may have been part of healing. Still, the biggest leap might not have been what they used, but that they used anything at all. The act of searching for relief, of noticing what soothed and what harmed, reveals a mind beginning to master its environment. Not just reacting to pain, but responding to it. Not just enduring suffering, but attempting to ease it. In the end, the story of early humans treating broken bones is not just a tale of survival. It's a mirror held up to our own nature. For all the stone tools and fire pits and burial rites we've uncovered, perhaps nothing speaks more to our shared humanity than the decision to care for the injured. It was in those long, quiet moments when someone stopped to cradle a wounded limb or bring food to the immobile that something extraordinary began to emerge. Take the skeleton of Turkana Boy, a Homo erectus youth discovered near Lake Turkana in Kenya. Around 6 million years old, his remains show spinal abnormalities and evidence of growth disorders. His body would have been frail, his movements limited, yet he lived long enough to reach adolescence. Who kept him safe? Who ensured he had enough to eat? These questions echo into the empty savannas of the past, offering no answers but demanding reflection. Across time, we see more than isolated examples. We see a pattern. Injuries not only survived but endured with help.